Welcome back to the Alt-Centrism Central podcast. I know it's been a while that we haven't recorded in a while, and you're expecting new content, so we
Mm-hmm.
brought you new content.
Yeah,
Today we're going to talk,
there's just so much shit happening in the world. So
of course, we're going to just talk about the state of the country, the world, and we
Mm-hmm.
have a few members of our Discord here to talk about it. Would you like to introduce yourself, guys?
I'm Elena
Hi.
Chow,
Oh, nice
And
to
I'm
meet you.
Phoebe
Thank you for being
Wu.
here. Oh, sorry, I
And
interrupted you.
oh shit, my bad. Okay. My name is Phoebe Wu, and we come from Nevada's District 3, I think, and we're in our local chapter for the We the People Civic Engagement Program.
Nice, awesome. Well, thank you for being here. All right,
Where's
I guess we can start with the event that's all on our minds. January 6th, the riot, the protest, the insurrection, whatever you want to call it. Oh my goodness, sent shockwaves right through my bones, my bones that are made of bones.
adamantium? I
Adamantium, yeah,
know that
that's the word
product.
I'm looking
I know
for.
that product, so I referenced it.
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
we'll go with that.
I think it's unfair. Like, I don't know. Now they're reprimanding all of Republicans and they're combining them all together, saying they're domestic terrorists, they're seditious, and I don't think they should do that. And now they're also saying, like, I forgot it was some Democratic Party. They're saying, "Oh, all of you Republican leadership resign because this is this is a bridging against democracy in general." I'm just like, why do you have to put a blanket statement?
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, people see what they saw on TV, and it's kind of frightening. You don't see that too often, where our representatives are literally hiding behind their seats, and then they just assume like, okay, yeah, that the right wing? Holy crap! Because we don't interact with people who we disagree with most of the time. They're just not in our circles, right? And so most people don't realize that there's a big difference between the people who are just standing outside waving flags and the people who are setting off pipe bombs. You still with us, Peyton?
I am still here.
Okay, just want to make sure you weren't dead again.
No, I didn't die of
I don't see
a
it.
Discord overdose. Sorry.
Discord overdose.
Yeah, I didn't die of a Discord overdose again.
Yeah, and also in Nevada, there's this one assemblywoman who attended the demonstration, but she didn't know it was going to turn into a whole ass riot. And then everyone is saying that she should resign. And I don't know, does that count? Do you think people who were inside the demonstration and like they didn't really like they participated in the beginning, but they didn't enter the Capitol? Do you think they should be reprimanded?
What's the context? Some
Okay,
representative
so
from
I mean,
Nevada.
just in general, like people who were at the demonstration, but they didn't even know that it was going to turn into a riot. So specifically, I'm talking about a Nevada assemblywoman. Her name is Annie Black, and she was at the demonstrations. She's attended Trump rallies before, and she says, "Oh yeah, they're very peaceful." And then she said that the demonstration was very orchestrated, and certain people were trying to provoke others to enter the Capitol, but then she backed up. But then, like, she backed up, and then she didn't participate in riot, like when it turned into a riot. So do you think that she should be still held accountable? Because she was still part of the demonstrations.
I don't think she should be held accountable, and like most of our state's leadership is majority like Democrat, so of course they're gonna ask her to resign.
Uh, I mean that's understandable if you look at it from a political point of view. If she's in the minority in her state and she wants to really show her, their base that she can be relied upon, but she didn't like go in or encourage any of that. So from what I'm hearing at least, so if that's the case, she was just there supporting her base. That doesn't sound like she was doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A lot of people are saying, like, literally, if you support Trump, that's against what America stands for. So I don't know if it's contradictory at all. And also, like, controversially, do you think that Donald Trump incited the violence?
Oh
In a
yeah,
way, he did.
yeah. I believe we were talking about that on the Discord the other day, and I was looking into that earlier today because I was watching TV when most of that happened, and I wasn't really paying attention the weeks leading up to that. So I was trying to look for what Trump said in public, but of course it's all been deleted now. So I'm not actually the best person to ask for that, to be honest. I don't know how much he contributed to inciting violence. I do know that he definitely called for a demonstration, at the very least, though.
Yeah, the only evidence I've ever seen is that he called for a demonstration.
When he was at the Stop the Steal rally, he was saying that he's gonna go walk down with the protesters. Walk down. I don't know if that really sounds violent, but he's really conscious of his words, and I feel like he knew that he was.
Oh, he was never gonna go walk with the protesters. The Secret Service would never allow that. That would never happen.
There wouldn't even be that much dichotomy if Donald Trump knew what he was saying, because he knows the power of his words. So I'm just like, why do you just overuse your Twitter account and you say all these things that are going to be offensive to other people? That's probably why we're so divided right now.
Do you think he's even cognizant of like the behavior of his entire fan base?
If he isn't by now, then I think he probably definitely saw it on the 6th. You back with us, Peyton?
Yeah.
Another Discord overdose?
My VPN is causing me to have Discord overdoses.
I see.
So I turned it off. It was saying I was living in the Midwest, so.
Well, yeah.
And also, people are saying it's unfair because they're saying that Democrats, they did kind of incite violence in a way. I don't remember the specific example, but I think Barack Obama, he tweeted something about systemic racism, and that led to other people killing a lot of police officers. So now a lot of people are like, well, if Donald Trump is going to be punished for this, then why aren't these other Democrats? Shouldn't they also be held accountable to that? And I mean, what do you guys think about that?
Well, politically, Congress wants to blame somebody for what happened. The cameras were all there. They showed inside what was happening, and if they don't have somebody to blame for it, then they're the ones whose asses are going to be on the fire, right? In the public's point of view. So Trump politically is their down guy, and we can totally get into whether or not that is justified, but politically, that's why that's happening. In terms of Democrats inciting violence, I don't know. It could have happened. I didn't see any of it though. If we can get those tweets from Obama, maybe we can look at those.
So here's kind of my take on it.
See if I can find it.
If we're going to be as we just did, impeach Donald Trump for incitement of violence, for making a tweet that somebody that about a demonstration, that people should go to the demonstration, then I think we also need to impeach every single member of Congress, because every time they vote on a bill, that incites violence. Every time they vote on a package of any kind.
Peyton, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Go ahead.
When you make those libertarian arguments, you got to give context. Otherwise, people will give
no context.
People won't understand what you're saying unless you give context.
Here's the context. When a member of Congress signs on a bill, what people don't realize about politics is that politics is a constant state of violence. When people say that Trump incited violence here, okay, lots of violence happens every day because of politics. Politics is a violent game. Everything you do in politics leads to some kind of violence. You may not see it directly, but that's what happens. That is what happens.
But Peyton, you gotta give the context that it's law enforcement. To enforce the law, you need to have some ability to commit violence. But if you just come out and say stuff like politics is a constant state of violence, guys, come on. People who haven't heard that argument before are not going to understand what you're talking about.
Sure, and I'm getting there to explain it. But I think that what people are refusing to acknowledge is that politics is not some holier than thou situation here. This is a dirty, disgusting game that leads to violence. It leads to all kinds of horrible things. And people like to pretend that what happened at the Capitol was, out of the norm. And the reason it was out of the norm for them is because they're seeing it for the first time. They're seeing the violence come to them. They're seeing the consequences of their actions up in front of them, instead of in some third world country or in a poor neighborhood here in the United States, or just a regular neighborhood, even a regular neighborhood here in the United States. They're seeing the consequences of their actions, and they don't like it, but they don't want to make the connection that this is what they do on a daily basis.
No, like I don't really have context because it was cut off for like half
Right.
of it. So
If I may summarize for you, Peyton, he is saying that
Sure,
government is a system which allows, which gives the government the right to use violence against citizens if they break certain rules. You know, that's what laws are, right? And what he's saying is that if people are going to be punished for the violence at the Capitol, then you also have to punish politicians. I think that's the gist of his argument.
And I'm not even talking about the punishment of the people at the Capitol. I'm talking about, for example, people want to punish Donald Trump. They want to punish actors who are not actually engaged in the violence, just people who, who set up this protest. This sets a dangerous precedent that anytime you set up a protest, if one person gets violent, then everybody can be attached to this. And if we're going to establish that precedent, okay, fine, let's establish that precedent and arrest every member of Congress right now.
Okay, yeah, I guess I can see that point. It kind of gets into what we were talking about earlier as to whether, how much blame does Trump have for what happened. And personally, I think Giuliani, if we're going to say that people encouraged violence, Giuliani encouraged more of it with his trial by combat comment. I mean, that's more obvious than saying, oh, it's going to be a wild protest. Giuliani over here saying, no, I'm going to get cut straight to the chase here and say, no, trial by combat, guys.
I think we also need to contextualize what happened at the Capitol. I think that what happened at the Capitol is very, very overblown. They knocked over pieces of furniture. They threw paper on the ground. Members of Congress left fucking Congress, before it even got violent. As soon as the protesters arrived, they left. They're like, oh, we're going to leave now. They do this every time. There's plenty of protests that have happened at the Capitol building where the congressmen leave beforehand because that's just like a preemptive security measure that they have. And look, I'm going to say it. I don't really care that a few pieces of furniture were knocked over. I don't really care that trash was spread everywhere. What this really was a bunch of LARPers mad that their New York liberal didn't win the election. That's all it was. And at the end of the day, the thing that's going to come from this is Patriot Act 2.0. It's not going to be, it wasn't some insurrection, but they're going to paint it as an insurrection because Patriot Act 2.0. We can get that out of this. We can further limit people's ability to protest. We can further limit people's ability to organize and do anything we don't like. And at the end of the day, people who fuel the flame of saying this is an insurrection and saying, oh my God, how terrible was this? How horrible. I can't believe our sacred capital was ransacked like this, are only fueling the fire for these politicians to pass all these laws and use tragedies like they have before, like 9/11, like the Vietnam War, anything that they've used before to further encroach on you as an individual.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out, Elena, you sent us our group chat a video of like police officers literally not caring that the protesters were going into the building. But I do believe to an extent that everybody who entered the building are pretty much terrorists because of what they were intending to do. And then regarding the Patriot Act, do you guys think the timing is correlated with like Section 230 and everything? And my teacher brought up like this really good point. Do you guys think there were like Russian and Chinese spies like just hidden in the, like just blending in with the crowd? Because I know that if there were demonstrations in Russia, we would have like US spies in Moscow and everywhere, like blending in with those. So do you guys think like There's
I think there were probably spies there, and I think that there were probably spies at every Trump rally and every Biden rally. I think that's just a fact. That if I were the leader of some foreign nation, I'd want to know everything that's happening.
I mean, yeah, this is a precedent that we established in the Cold War, and really a precedent that's been established forever. Because it's of my opinion that no revolution, civil war, or whatever happens without some kind of instigation from a foreign power or somebody who's like an elite here in the United States. And you know what? We had both of those check marks ticked off probably. We definitely had, people who are elites instigating violence. We've had it for many years in this country. But also, I mean, it's just common sense now that you should expect at some big public event in a major country for there to be operatives from other countries there. I think that's just something you expect now.
I do want to circle back. You mentioned Section 230. That's an interesting theory if the timing is somehow correlated, because, obviously Trump's social media has been completely shut down. Like he even got how do you get banned off of Pinterest? How does that happen, right? But he's banned off of Pinterest now. And TikTok. Did our president use TikTok?
No, maybe I don't know. I was hearing a list of social media accounts. Maybe it was like accounts affiliated with Donald Trump. Oh, really?
It might be a preemptive banning.
Yeah, okay, but that's interesting to think about, because Republicans have been pushing for a repeal or a change of Section 230 for a while now. Is it coincidental? I think it would have to be coincidental. I mean, Trump hasn't been any more inflammatory with his tweets than he has been in the past or anything.
So for some context, Section 230, if I remember correctly, is the one that prevents social media companies from being super liable for things that happen on their platform.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Section 230, I'm not a fan of Section 230. I mean, Section 230 is one of those things I feel like is the reason why there are social media giants instead of a lot of different social media sites that people are using. So, maybe this is all happening. I think this is what's more interesting is the whole Insurrection Act, how this happened around the same time that the Insurrection Act was, floating around Congress, which is essentially Patriot Act 2.0. That is 100% just what it is. It's just the Patriot Act 2.0. It's expanding the scope of what the government can do. It's expanding the scope of who can be called an insurrectionist, who the military can be used against, and that I think I'm not 100% positive that Donald Trump even signed off on it. And I think, we've seen this many times. I mean, just look at the pandemic going on right now, and then if you go and look at all the legislation that was passed, it's typical for governments to use these kinds of incidents to either cover up in the news cycle, big legislation that they want to pass that they don't really want the American people knowing about, or to just use the crisis to get legislation passed, to get popular support for it.
Never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Now, Peyton, I gotta be quite honest, never heard of the Insurrection Act. Sorry, I should be more informed, I guess, but here's your homework, Peyton. I want you to get a quote that says something that the Insurrection Act does. That's your homework. Use your pro gamer moves and figure it out for us. Sorry, Elena, were you trying to say something?
Oh, I was just trying to confirm that, yeah, Donald Trump, he activated it again.
Activated what?
Okay, yes. So I'm little misuse of my vernacular, but the Insurrection Act existed. They expanded the scope of the Insurrection Act.
I see.
The Insurrection Act has existed since 1807, I believe, and it expanded the scope, and Donald Trump is currently using it. And we literally have military vehicles in major cities just there, acting as police forces, essentially.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. It's a little terrifying.
Well, we've kind of had that anyway with sheriff's department militarizing from Homeland Security.
Exactly. I was about.
It's been happening anyway.
I think we're coming close to a culmination of those things and the actual use of these things, because we haven't really seen a major scale use of these things. Like, of course, we've seen like they'll send the fucking SWAT to a drug raid or something. Minor crimes. They'll send heavily armed militarized police to minor crimes to deal with those, and the incidents go bad. There are plenty of incidents of this.
What do you mean when you say we're close to seeing the use of these forces or something like that?
I'm saying like the next time. I mean, we already somewhat saw it here with Capitol Police. I mean, they used live ammo, I think, right off the bat with this riot, and they killed that 16-year-old girl. They fucking, I don't remember the specifics, but remember they really didn't hold back when shooting at that girl.
So you're saying we're going to see more deployments like that?
100%.
In protest riots.
The standard now is going to be live ammo for these kind of things. It's going to be live ammo. They're going to send in people who are heavily armored. They're not going to play around anymore. They're going to use the things that have been given to them by Homeland Security.
Correct me if I'm right, but is it the president's decision to send the military?
Yeah.
What justifies his actions though? How does he know what's considered right or wrong? Because
that's the thing. It's so broad, it doesn't matter now.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that was debated during impeachment, right? Because he delayed the deployment of the National Guard. So it's definitely at his discretion. He is the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. What a lot of people don't realize is that the president has the power to just basically declare anybody an insurrectionist now. If we can declare a bunch of people who, from my knowledge, barely any of them had guns, the ones who had guns kept them holstered or hidden the entire time, and the majority of the deaths are, the police firing on them. If those can be a bunch of insurrectionists, then, anybody's an insurrectionist. Everybody at a BLM protest in the past few months where they gotten even slightly violent is an insurrectionist now. Everybody who's ever gone to a protest that has any violence, you're an insurrectionist now. You are now permitted to be used against deadly force and military force at that.
I feel like it's up to the media, because you could see that in the Black Lives Matter protests, they said that a bunch of them are peaceful. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be very one-sided, and they're only going to do it to condemn the people that they don't like, people they don't share.
Sure, of course. I mean, that's the state in general. I mean, I don't necessarily think that these BLM protests are going to be completely off hands. I think the people who are most at harm, though, are the exact people who were at the most harm during these BLM riots, where the shop owners, people who were defending their stores during these riots, the police were just completely gone while people were destroying their stores. But as soon as they pull out a gun or are suspected of having an illegal firearm to protect their shop from people, the police immediately show up, they get arrested, they go to jail. And I mean, we've already been seeing it used as a baton against people they don't like. It's just going to get a lot worse.
All right. So we've definitely very clearly established that government does not let a good crisis go to waste, right? I want to take the argument back to who's to blame for this, right? How much blame does the president have? The people who surround him? How much blame goes to the rioters? Actually, let's Peyton, you do not think that they're insurrectionists. I believe Phoebe firmly stated that they are insurrectionists. I want to hear both your reasons for why or why not.
I mean, they knew what they were doing. They were going in the Capitol building. A lot of them were chanting like violent phrases and like all these things against like the government officials. And yeah, I agree that people outside like actually demonstrating shouldn't be labeled as insurrectionists, but when you're entering like a government building and like toppling over police officers and all these people, then you should clearly be labeled as like a terrorist slash insurrectionist, because nobody in their right mind just thinks to just go in the building and stage a coup.
I mean, I think it's very hard to call this a coup when they showed up, you know, barely any of them armed. The majority of what they did was, you know, throw over a pieces of furniture and throw paper on the ground. Like, if this was really about them trying to, you know, what do you call it? Commit an insurrection, commit a rebellion or whatever, it wouldn't have looked like this. It would have been a lot worse. At worst, what this was a mid-level BLM riot, which we've seen all across the country. The only reason people are upset is because this happened at the Capitol building. If this happened at any other building, this would not be news. If this happened at any other building, this would not be news. And I think people are like overestimating the fact that this is a, you know, public property. No congressmen were there. They were all gone by the time any of them were inside the Capitol building. I can't call this an insurrectionist. You could call them terrorists, sure, because terrorist has a very broad definition. But an insurrection, if it was going to be an insurrection, I think Donald Trump would have actually been in the crowd. But the fact that he was not there among the people, you know, and leading people with guns, I can't call this an insurrection. I think that's a disservice to the word insurrection.
A rebuttal?
Yeah, I can agree with that, but I'm definitely gonna keep labeling them as terrorists just because like of their intent and the violence they had caused. So, I
mean, that's fine.
Yeah, well, to back Phoebe up, I mean, they were saying that they were gonna hang Mike Pence and they had these zip ties. So, I mean, if the senators were actually there, I think what they were saying could be considered true threats. I'm pretty sure they would have most likely killed them.
Now, I believe some of them were still in the House chamber, right? You know, they weren't there when the protesters finally broke in, but they were there when they were in the building, I believe.
Well, the order to evacuate was literally when the protesters, like, before it even got violent. The order to evacuate was far before that. So if they weren't already out at that point, if they weren't already out by the time that the protesters actually entered the building, then they were leaving. They were in the process of leaving.
I think they were, but I remember seeing on TV that, you know, there were people who are that's where that woman got shot in the neck because she was trying to climb through the window to get into the hallway to access, you know, the chamber there, where there were still congressmen and women who were sheltering. But they obviously weren't there forever because they eventually broke in. The rioters broke in, but I believe they were there.
Sure, and you know, even if there was a congressman there, I doubt they would have done anything. I really have to be honest with you. I think that they are a bunch of LARPers. They don't have any. They didn't actually have any intent. They talked a big game, but they did nothing. There was plenty of stuff they could have done if this was an insurrection. They could have taken the computers. They didn't take the computers. They could have. There were so many things they could have done that if this was a real insurrection, then boom, I would have called it an insurrection.
I think that's actually an interesting point.
This is more just a riot. This is a riot. It's accurate to call it a riot.
We did see a lot of them who were just taking pictures, you know, posing, saying,
yeah,
look at me, we took over the Capitol, right?
It was a photo op. It was them LARPing. It was unironically like going to, you know, people who, you know, role play as in they're in the Vietnam War. They go to fucking like a field and they're like, oh, it's the Vietnam War guys. It was the same thing. They're LARPing as they're insurrectionists, but in reality, they're just people throwing a hissy fit. And they all the fact that they went home with minimal police intervention is also, you know, evidence of that.
Yeah, if they were actually insurrectionists, they would have all been put under arrest. There would have been probably some kind of gunfight.
Yeah, no, the government does not hesitate to kill insurrectionists. They would have if the government was scared of a real insurrection, those people would have been dead. Everybody taking their little photo ops would be dead.
It was very clear, especially just by the way that the police were acting and the way that they were dressed, that they were treating it like a riot and not necessarily an insurrection.
It was a riot. It was a riot. This was them going in and trashing the Capitol building, but they didn't take anything. If they were trying to overthrow the United States government, having access to all those computers, all those congressional computers, unrestricted, I mean, that's you know, that's China's dream.
Or even
that's
just
Russia's
paper.
dream.
Like, there's no way they shredded all their documents before they left. They left it all there, right?
Yeah,
there's top secret information, but so far we have not seen any leaks of top secret information.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to call them terrorists. That's fine. Terrorist is a very broad definition. Anybody who commits violence and has a slightly political, you know, reasoning for doing so is a terrorist. If I went and punched Joe right now, and I said, I hate you. You're a Democrat or whatever. I'm a terrorist. There we go. I committed violence for a political reason. I'm a terrorist.
How dare you, sir?
And nobody take that out of context.
A Democrat.
Take the sound clip of saying I and then am and then terrorist. Don't take that out of context. If you do, you'll be a very naughty boy and you'll go to prison.
I'm gonna take it out of context. I'm gonna do it, Peyton. You punched me, so I'm gonna do it now.
Oh,
your career is over. You've been bested.
Flabbergasted. Oh, flabbergasted. I guess my career is over. I guess I might as well just, you know, join the...
All right, yeah, we're gonna have to edit. That's going too far, dude.
Jake, edit that out.
All right, yeah, we're gonna have to edit. That's going too far, dude.
Jake, edit that out. Censor that. I'm gonna censor that.
The point of the riots were like, I mean, I get they were trying to stop the votes, but I think they ended up exacerbating everything. Like, Trump got impeached for the second time, and now everyone has a reason to be like, oh yeah, as you can see, all these conservatives are dangerous. So I think everything is just getting worse, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I could totally believe a theory that, like, some kind of opposition was, you know, planted in the protests and like riled everybody up to get violent, because it's a domino effect with these kind of things. It literally takes one bad apple to start something and everybody else will start. So it's totally possible somebody, because this had more harm for these people than benefits. It could be just sheer incompetence, or it could be this was a planned thing. Either way, I think both are, you know, a good, are a viable theory, that is, as to what happened.
I wonder if a guy who sold a podium on eBay, I wonder if he got some profit at the very least before he got arrested.
Somebody sold a podium on eBay? What?
Yeah, they stole a podium.
Oh, they stole not sold. Stole a podium. Okay.
No, they stole it and then sold it for like 99K, right, Elena?
I'm pretty
99,000.
sure. I don't know, but these people, wow, look at them. They're businessmen. They know what they're doing. I should have done that.
I don't think that item's gonna get delivered. Somebody better contact eBay customer service. That's okay then. I'd be interested to see if that person actually got his delivery. I mean, what are you gonna do with it? You're gonna start a YouTube channel and be like, "This is my podium, okay? It's mine. I paid for it." That's.
People are so dumb. They're leaving breadcrumbs. Like, why would you post this on social media? Like, you're asking to get arrested right there.
That's why, you know, I don't know. I could see it going either way. They're dumb enough to make them look this bad, to make themselves look this bad, but they'd also be dumb enough to, you know, believe any kind of person who may have been planted in the crowd. So
see, and it just doesn't make sense to me that if this is an insurrection as well, that none of them were masked. I think there was like 2 people I saw masked. Like,
right, and most of them were like the flimsy bandana kind of masks, just to say, "Oh, I'm wearing a mask."
Looking at the crowd, most of these people are not the type of people you expect to show up to an insurrection. These are the type of people you expect to show up to a pro-Trump protest at the Capitol, and then somebody's getting violent. I guess I'll follow them.
Right, it's the mob mentality.
Yeah, I mean, and also I could see the same thing happening, you know, with a Democratic president. Like, let's flip the roles a little bit. I think the same thing could happen. I think the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean, literally, when Trump won, there were riots, there were riots, there were protests, there was claims that there was election fraud.
Right, but
they didn't get to the Capitol building, but they definitely got bad. They weren't these, you know, nobody said there was an insurrection by them.
Yeah, but I mean, that goes back to the fact that our political identities are like directly attached to our egos and our values, our self-worth and everything. But also the fact that, you know, there were people upset, you know, when Hillary lost the election and Trump won, but it didn't go that far because Trump, over the course of, you know, 4 or 5 years, he's developed that cult of personality. So his followers are a lot more devoted. Well, whereas,
that's what I'm saying. Like, if Hillary had won, and then we had this situation where she developed somewhat of a cult of personality, which I don't know if she could, because she's not a very charismatic person at all. But like, let's say there was a charismatic Democrat who, you know, could develop a very cult of personality type thing. Barack Obama was pretty close to that, but since it wasn't Barack Obama running, but let's just imagine that. And then they lose the election the way they did. There's actually, you know, we see some videos, because I think people saying it's completely incredible that any election fraud could have happened at all. I mean, come on. This is an outrageous claim, an unbelievable claim to say that there was no possibility for any election fraud. I'm not saying the election was stolen. Even the election fraud, I think that did probably happen, would not be enough to, you know, change the outcome of the election. It would just, you know, keep the votes closer. But, you know, let's say that we had those videos. We had videos of people putting ballots into trash cans. We had videos of people, you know, doing these things that clearly look like election fraud, or but it was Barack Obama instead of Donald Trump, or some other charismatic Democrat who had a cult of personality. I think we would see the same thing. I think we would see his most devoted supporters going to the Capitol building and trying to stop the count of the vote, or something like that. I think we could see the same scenario happening if it was the other side.
Yep. Given that sentiment that you've just touched on of how divided we are and how we could see it happening, you know, either way. Well, what happens? I want to spend the last few minutes, because we only have about probably 10 minutes left. I want to spend the last few minutes talking about, you know, what's next for our country. Where do we go from here? Obviously, we've talked about the Insurrection Act a little bit. Is there any good news, or is there more bad news? Who wants to go first?
It's all bad, pretty much.
All bad.
I think the right is pretty much like dead now.
Yeah, the right. the right is gonna have a massive like transformation, and they're just gonna have a because the right is, and I like to say that conservatives are just progressives at the speed limit, because this is obviously true. They're just gonna speed up a little bit, become more like Democrats, and then go back to normal pace of becoming more and more like progressives. But I think though, what is more interesting is that we're going to see more of the state versus federal battles. I think that's what the Trump presidency has been leading up to, and what it's really fueled the fire. So if we go back to the abortion bills, if we go back to the different gun bills, really we've been seeing a lot of different battles between the state governments and the federal governments. And I think that's interesting, and I think that's a good thing for the country, is moving further away, is any oppositions to federalism as we can get. We need as many as those as possible, because I think that's really the way the country needs to go.
So you see good things coming out of this then?
Yeah, but not. They're not going to see. We're not going to see the fruits of them until much later.
I see. All right.
I'm looking far out, but it's, as everyone says, it's got to get a lot worse before it gets better.
And are we at the worst point yet, or is there more bad to come?
Absolutely not. This is not the worst that we could get.
All right.
I think we can get to the purge or the civil war. Like, I mean, at first it was a joke, but now I don't think it is. I think it might even come true. I'm not even joking when there's polarization. It's either there's no such thing as a compromise anymore. I think one of the best compromises was like the Constitution and how they made the Bill of Rights. Oh my God, that was damn good. But now like people are like, oh yeah, I mean, if you just agree with me and everything I believe, then yeah, I can totally compromise with you. It's not even a compromise anymore. I feel like that word is just thrown around, and I don't know. Because I've had experiences before too where I've lost friends before because I had a different political view than them, even though I was completely civil. So right. I don't know. I am very pessimistic.
Well,
I think it's because like civic education isn't really prominent as it should be. And then the fact that the civil discourse in like the Philadelphia Convention isn't present like anywhere else now.
Given that a lot of people have been actually talking about an upcoming civil war, and that it's no longer a joke or something to laugh about anymore, and people are taking it seriously, what do we all think that could look like?
Cringe.
I mean, I'm not sure if a civil war is really going to happen. I definitely think secession is going to become a more popular idea among the states.
So anyway, I kind of want to get into our concluding statements here, because I personally don't have much time. I got to go to work soon. So if anybody has a grand speech that they've prepared that they want to say to our whole 50 to 100 people audience between our platforms, now's your chance. Now's your chance to tell the country what you stand for and what you think of current events and the state of our country going forward. Anybody want to start? It has to be a written speech, though. You can't just speak off the cuff. That's just not allowed.
That's incorrect, and if you say that again, I'll have to remove you.
Well, you wouldn't dare. You wouldn't dare.
Oh, I wouldn't dare?
It has to be a written speech. It has to.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
No, here you go. Here's my non-written speech. America, say goodbye, because we're going to be 5 different countries. Here we go.
5 different countries.
Probably more. Probably more.
All right. That's short and sweet. Phoebe, I'm going to turn it over to you, even though you're not ready. Your concluding statement. Ready, set, go.
Okay, I'm just going to read my We the People speech.
Okay. It doesn't have to be a written speech. It does not. I was kidding. Okay.
No, I was just kidding too.
All right.
But yeah, I guess we need to enforce the rule of law to everybody, because that's the only way like our democracy can work. And then we need to fix like the disenfranchisement and then we need to give like everybody an equal chance, and then we need to hold everybody accountable, and then we need to respect those getting into good and necessary trouble.
All right. That's great.
What about you, Elena?
Okay, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. My closing statement is Section 230 needs to be fixed.
Needs to be fixed. All right, that's a really short and sweet statement. Section 230 needs to be fixed. Can you elaborate on how, just real quick?
It needs to be fixed to the point where these providers, they cannot just moderate whatever content they want. And I feel like they're having this immunity right now. And it's very unfair. And as we can see also with like Parler, right? Because it's literally going against Section 230, because they're supposed to be a nonpartisan platform, but they are being responsible for what other people are saying. And also I know that a lot of business tycoons, like Facebook and Twitter, they're trying to modify Section 230 to the way where it's adhering to the philosophy of their community guidelines, and that's not preferable. We don't want that. I think what we need is just, I think we should still enable free speech, but to the point where, you're not going to silence a certain person and you're not going to become an echo chamber. So yeah, Section 230 needs to be fixed.
Gotcha. All right. That's a strong concluding statement. You guys want to shout out, you want to shout out your organization, your civics organization? You want to shout out your personal channels or anything? You're more than welcome to before we wrap things up. No? All right.
Good.
All right.
You're good. Yep.
Well, we both really appreciate you guys being here. It's been an awesome debate. Great episode, I think. And you're more than welcome to come back next time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. End of episode.